In this lesson, we're going to talk about the circle of control. And this is this idea that there is a circle of things you have control over. There's a small, and it's a very small thing. And these are things that are going to be your actions, your thoughts, your words, everything really that has to do with you. There's a circle of influence, which is a little bit bigger. And so those are things that you can kind of control and influence a little bit, like, how well trained your dog is, but you really don't have absolute control over it. Then you have everything that's outside of the circle of control, which is everything else in life: the weather, other people, the outcome of a sports game. These things are outside of what you can control and you can't influence them, you can't control them. One big mistake people make is to become outcome dependent, which means that they're only happy if a certain outcome happens. And the big issue is that this conflicts with the circle of control model, because you are focusing on something that is outside of your circle of control 9 times out of 10. Most outcomes are dependent on a bunch of circumstances or people or things that are going to happen. Like, you can play and be the best soccer player possible, but you can't control if your goalie doesn't stop any kicks from going in. So while yes, you may be able to influence some of the outcome of the game, you ultimately can't control it. So the end result of this is anxiety. People worrying about controlling an outcome. The problem is that they're worried about controlling something they just cannot control. It's humanly impossible to control those things. But when we think we can, and we conflate what's in our circle of control, we end up worrying about it. And that's what anxiety is. It's worry about a future possible situation. Now, the keeping yourself centered around this circle of control, which is essentially just your actions and yourself, that is a different side. So instead of being goal-oriented and outcome-dependent, you become process-oriented. This doesn't mean you don't set goals, you don't have things you want to work towards, but it means that you put success and you put your value on the process. And process is another way of looking at actions. The things that you can do and you have control over, if you make your success measured around what you're doing on a day-to-day from that process perspective, you're always going to feel like you're moving forward and being successful because you are doing the small components that matter. Now, to help visualize this, we want to think at the very top, we have our vision, we have our goals, we have our long-term outcome we want. Below that, that goal is made up of different skills. So, for example, we have a goal of being the best soccer player, winning the championship of any sport. And we can talk about soccer. Within soccer, you've got different skills, and that could be juggling, it could be passing, it could be speed, conditioning, it could be strength, mindset, education. All of these things are skills. Every skill is another discipline, is broken up into practices, and practices are the culmination of actions and specific repeated patterns that build that skill. So you can think there's outcome, a bunch of skills, each skill is a bunch of practices, and each practice is a bunch of actions. And so you can think, what are actions that build in terms of practice to the skill I want, which ultimately contributes to the outcome I want? That is very helpful. And so instead of focusing on the end, you can focus on the action and the process. And this process oriented allows you to define success and enjoy the trip. This is the idea of if you're going on a hike and it's 12 miles long, if you are only happy when you get to the very top, you're going to be pretty miserable for the majority of your life, because 95% of the time, 99% even, is all spent in the process, in the journey. And the people that are successful as athletes and successful in any mark of life are those that enjoy and take ownership of the process. This may seem insignificant and small, but this is truly the most important shift you can have, because instead of getting up and worrying about, I got to make the team, we got to win this, we got to do all these things that are outside of your control. If you make your success simply getting up and putting in the work every single day, you will very quickly get to a point of success you would otherwise never would have, because you're finding joy in the process. And the other half of this is that all that anxiety you felt about trying to have this outcome, here's 3 words that are going to help you. Action alleviates anxiety. When you're feeling anxiety about something, it's because you're trying to control something that's outside of your circle of control. But instead, if you just focus on what can I do now that's within my circle of control, you're going to notice that that action alleviates that anxiety. So the big takeaway here is to figure out from the goals and visions you have, what are the actions you can do to build towards that. So if you're worried that you're not in good enough shape or conditioning for soccer, And then instead of just sitting there and worrying and feeling, I'm not good enough shape, and feeling depressed and anxious about it and not actually doing anything, focus on the action, even if it's a small one. I'm gonna go out for a walk, I'm gonna go for a jog, I'm gonna do a conditioning workout, I'm gonna find a coach that can help me with that. That takes away the anxiety. Action alleviates anxiety. Focus on that and you will be so much more successful than if you sat around and worried and did nothing, because that is only paralyzing you and keeping you stuck.